Dr. Robin, can you give me a refresher course on how to talk to my kids about body safety? I was as a child, and the whole topic is very hot button for me because the fact that no one spoke to me about body safety is what set me up for a lifetime of psychological damage that I'm barely beginning to recover from now. So the topic itself is so triggering for me, and no one more than me knows that I have to talk to my kids about body safety, and I have to help them understand about confusing touch. I don't know how to do it. Help. Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. Today I'm responding to a question by a post-traumatic parenting community member who is triggered by the fact that her children are reaching the age she was when she began to be, and she wants to talk to her kids about body safety, but she wants to make sure she's doing it right, and she also wants to manage her own triggers at the same time. If you're a post-traumatic parent and talking to your kids about body safety is triggering either because of your own experience with or abuse, or even just boundary crossing adults, or if talking to your kids about confusing touch is difficult because it wasn't modeled to you, or the way in which it was done in your family was very not consistent with your values, and right now you would like to do it differently but you don't quite know how. Hi, welcome. We get it. We've been there. We're post-traumatic parents too. So click subscribe below so you never miss another episode, because this is the kind of thing we talk about, and we're going to go sort of no holds barred, understanding our own reactions and then understanding our inner child's reaction, and then working with our real world child at the same time. So the first thing I like to talk about with children is I am not a big fan of the concept of good touch, bad touch. People use good touch, bad touch with kids all the time. And I'll tell you why that's not the greatest terminology. Good touch, bad touch implies that a child knows what's good and what's bad. In fact, if an abuser is very, very skilled at grooming, then what they are going to do is make bad touch kind of feel like good touch, because they're going to desensitize the child from feeling their natural sense of discomfort at being touched by an adult or being boundary crossed in any way. And they're going to keep kind of like amplifying it a little bit, almost like when you're in a bathtub and you keep turning up the temperature and then you don't realize how hot it is, and then suddenly it's like, whoa, it's boiling. That's kind of what a confusing as adult is going to do. So what I like to do is, instead of good touch, bad touch, I like to say confusing touch, because this way the child isn't the one that has to label the touch as good or bad, right? We're the adults. We're going to label things to children. One of our functions as adults is to explain the world to children. So if it's confusing, come talk to me about it. You child don't have to decide, was that good or was that bad? Confusing? Ask me about it. Right? So that's the first thing. And the first thing I want to say before we even talk about the mechanics of how to do this, the first thing I want to say is I have a picture book for the parents first. And the picture book is called The Rabbit Listened. The Rabbit Listened is this wonderful little picture book about a rabbit who listens. All the other animals get mad and sad and scared when the little boy comes and says something upsetting, but the rabbit just listens. And I want you to read that book to your own inner child and to remember, it's my job to listen as the parent. I don't want to react, because if I react very strongly, my child may not come to me with like what's really going on. If everything stresses me out and gets me upset, they may not come to me. Because if sometimes when a child does want to talk about something confusing, they test the water with like a minor incident to see how we'll react before they say the real story. So if we overreact to the minor story, we're never going to hear the real story. So it's super important. Start off by reading The Rabbit Listened to your own inner child. And remind yourself that as the adult in the room, you have the capacity to listen. You want to be that person that your child comes to talk about everything confusing in their life. The teacher who's kind of mean, the friend who's sending all sorts of confusing signals. Sometimes they're nice and sometimes they're not. The fact that they don't really like math very much. The fact that sometimes they're very jealous of their little sister. Like, I'm the adult who can listen because I am on your side, kid. I love you. I'm with you. And there's no emotion you can have. There's no experience you can have. Nothing will make me love you less. I will always love you, and I'm always here for it. And I'm always here to hear it. Not in every single moment. Sometimes I'm not available. But when we're having a conversation, I'm here and I'm present and I want to listen. So then your child comes to you with the things that are confusing. So the way I like to, the picture books I like to use and the way I like to have this conversation, and I every so often will read these picture books to my own children prophylactically, like not because anything particular happened, but just because like every so often we're going to have a refresher course and a reminder. So the first book I like to read, and this you can do with three and up, is Some Parts Are Not for Sharing. Some Parts Are Not for Sharing just talks about basically the parts of your body that are for sharing, like your hands. You can high five and you can shake someone's hand. And then there are the parts of your body that are covered by a standard bathing suit, right? And those parts of your body are not for sharing. And this really works because there are some families that are more conservative in their approach. They're more religious. And they're concerned about using body parts, the names of body parts with their kids. And this way, if you're concerned about that, you can still have this conversation with your kids. Don't put it off. You can talk about the parts of your body that are covered by a bathing suit and the parts that aren't. Like, I'd rather someone, rather than like twisting people's arms and saying, you must use the proper anatomical name for body parts. If you don't, you're setting your kid up for abuse. If that means that even one parent's going to delay this conversation because it makes them uncomfortable, then I'd rather give them an alternative. And that's the alternative. The alternative is the parts of your body that are covered by a bathing suit, and I would make it very clear. If you're comfortable naming anatomical parts, name the anatomical parts. That's obviously in some ways better because your child's then going to know the proper names, and then they'll have the actual vocabulary to say, like, this man touched my, right? They'll be able to say that. But if you're not comfortable, that's your sticking point, and that's why you're not having this conversation with your kid, use a book like this. And we talk about the parts of our body that are private that are not for sharing. But then we have to talk about something else. We have to talk about the concept of consent, because there are parts of your body that are ostensibly for sharing, and yet you don't necessarily want to share them. Two books that I love about this, I don't have them here to show. One of them is called Don't Hug Doug. And the idea behind Don't Hug Doug is Doug does not like to be hugged. He just doesn't enjoy it. Now, are hugs confusing? Not in every situation. Some kids love hugs, and some people were very happy to hug, right? You know, I haven't seen my aunt in a very long time. I might hug her when I see her. My kid comes home from school, they're going to jump into my arms and give me a hug. Am I going to hug a complete stranger that I just met for the first time? Probably not. I don't know you yet, right? We got to get to know each other first. So the idea behind Don't Hug Doug is some people don't consent to touches that other people would consider fine. It's your body. You get to decide which parts of it you want to share. And if you don't want to share any part of your body, you don't have to. And this is where we do have to educate parents that your kid does not have to hug grandpa if their kid doesn't want to, because you don't want them to turn off their attention to that little uh-oh voice inside their stomach that says, I don't want to do this. I don't want to touch this person. So if you're at a family party and grandpa says, you must hug me, and it's disrespectful, and all my grandchildren sit on my lap, and there's like that uncle that insists on hugging everybody, and your kids don't want to, very respectfully, you can say, in our family, we don't hug, or it's okay if she doesn't want to sit on your lap. Here are your choices. She can give you a fist bump. She can wave from mommy's lap. I can hug you instead. But we are not going to actually ask her to do something she's uncomfortable with, because we're teaching her to pay attention to body cues and her body's sense of safety. Honestly speaking, if somebody gets offended by that, a little red flag pops up in my brain about them. Because if you explain to a well-intentioned adult that I don't want my child to lose that signal of safety that they get when they're like, no, don't want to do this. And that person's like, no, I don't care about their signal of safety. They've got to sit on my lap. I don't no, I'm not so comfortable with that person. A red flag just went up, and I'm about to put more boundaries in place than I maybe even had previously, because I don't like that. What I would want is that person to say, I totally get that. Right? I totally get that. You want to keep your kids safe. So do I, as another adult in their orbit. Of course I want to keep them safe. I get that. I absolutely will respect it. And sometimes that might be having a conversation with your child before a holiday party. Like, if you don't want to hug, what do you want to do instead? Do you want to wave? Do you want to fist bump? Do you want to do a virtual hug? And, give them, so that way they have their menu and they're empowered as part of their menu. Going with that little uh-oh voice inside your stomach. I really like the book Uncle Willie's Tickles, specifically because Uncle Willie's Tickles is not about inappropriate touch. It's about a boy whose uncle comes to visit, and the uncle is lovely in many ways. He's fun and he's funny and he's enjoyable, but he tickles. And this boy doesn't like to be tickled. And he doesn't know how to say that, so he makes all sorts of excuses to avoid Uncle Willie. And then he finally tells his mom, because confusing, we tell mom. So when you read a book like that and he tells mom, you can tell your kids, here's where I cheer, because when something's confusing, we tell mom. And his mom says, okay, let's tell Uncle Willie then. And mom tells Uncle Willie, right? Mom is not mad at him. Mom tells Uncle Willie, and Uncle Willie's like, okay, sure, I will never tickle you again. So Uncle Willie handles it perfectly. But the idea that a touch that is uncomfortable, even if it's a part that's for sharing, you're also allowed to say no to, because we want to keep that little uh-oh voice, as Gavin D. Becker calls it. He wrote a book called Protecting the Gift that I highly recommend. So you want to keep that little uh-oh voice tuned to the fact that, yeah, I have the right to listen to my body's signals, and if my body's signals are telling me no, I'm going to respect my body's signals. So that's the next conversation I like to have. And you see, like, I'll read a book, and then we'll go a few weeks, and then I'll read another book, and we'll talk about it. Every so often I'm going to remember kids, or I might even just say, yeah, I didn't like it when that man got so close to us on the subway. That, my little uh-oh voice did not like that, right? Because I want to educate them. We want to be thinking about it. Another book that I like is Yes, No, which is a picture book about consent. And in this picture book, it's, all the different things that kids can and cannot consent to. Right? Like, here's a baby, he's saying no because grandpa's tossing him up in the air and he doesn't like it, so he's crying. And then you can show a picture of, here's a clown, but these two kids are scared, so they're hiding behind their mom, right? So the idea is that there's lots of ways to show consent, and there's lots of ways to withdraw consent. You're allowed to withdraw consent whenever you want to. Keep in mind, this book does cover body parts, names for body parts, so if you're not comfortable with that, just know that that's in there. Another book that I like to use is The Trouble with Secrets. It has a lollipop stuck to it, but The Trouble with Secrets teaches kids the idea of the difference between a secret and a surprise. There's no such thing as a secret from a parent. Any adult who tells you that they're keeping a secret from your parent, or you should keep a secret from your parent, is automatically in the category of a confusing adult, and that means you need to tell another trusted adult about it. I recently had this story because I sometimes teach child safety courses in schools, and I teach a lot of social and emotional learning lessons, and I went into a classroom and I had taught all these lessons in like a third grade classroom, and there was a teacher and she said, we're going to do this really exciting project, and it's a secret. You're not going to tell your parents, and then when they come for parent-teacher night, they're going to see it, and you're going to keep it a secret, and no one's allowed to tell their parents about this project. And my class was like right after, and someone a little kid raised her hand, and she goes, the art teacher was being a confusing adult. She said we're supposed to keep a secret from our parents. What should we do? And I called the art teacher in, and I said, making up a name here, Mrs. Smith said secret, but I think what Mrs. Smith meant was surprise. You're not telling your parents now, but in a few weeks, during, parent-teacher night, when they come in and they see this gorgeous mural that you guys are all making together, they're going to be so surprised. A secret we never keep, but a surprise that your parents are going to find out about at a later date is okay. And then Mrs. Smith apologized for being a confusing adult, and we all praised the class, like, you were confused. An adult did something that you had learned was confusing, and you handled it by going to a trusted adult. That was wonderful. We're all so proud of you. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. And we praised the class, and we were, very excited for them because they were using their safety behaviors. Now, if it does happen that a child does experience unwanted touch, confusing touch, maybe even peer confusing touch, sexualized bullying, these things happen. A book I like to use in that situation is called I Said No. It's about a boy who was touched by his friend on a sleepover, and it goes through all of the red flags, what red flag behaviors are and what green flag behaviors are. And it's a great book to work with kids who have actually experienced some situation of unwanted touching. Now, as you are talking about these topics with your child, I want you to turn the attention of your inner child to what it feels like to have these conversations, and to really sit with your inner child and to say to your inner child, perhaps to mourn, and to say to your inner child, it is so sad that there wasn't a trusted adult who told me this information. I bet, inner child, you're feeling a little jealous of my real world children because they're having this experience of a protective parent that you did not have. And let's sit here and be sad about that for a bit. Let's mourn and let me comfort you. Because in protecting our children, we are also experiencing the sensation of what it's like to be protected. And that will help us heal from the abandonment trauma of not having been protected as a child. So I really want you to tune your inner child into the experience of teaching your real world children about body safety, because parenting isn't only healthy, it's also healing. If you like this video, if you've been wondering about how to teach your children about body safety as a post-traumatic parent, if you find the whole topic really triggering or really scary because of your own history, I really hope that this was helpful. If you know a fellow post-traumatic parent who needs the information in this video and it's important for that parent to know this, please tag them, send this video to them, like, comment, save, share, so that the post-traumatic parenting community grows, so that the people who need us can find us, because we are growing one post-traumatic parent at a time. If you want to meet your fellow post-traumatic parents and hang out where the post-traumatic parenting community hangs out, check out @Dr. Koslowitz Psychology on Instagram. If you want to read my writing about parenting and about best practices in trauma recovery and parenting, check out the Targeted Parenting blog on Psychology Today. The Post-Traumatic Parenting podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. That's where I interview experts in the fields of trauma and parenting and the intersection of the two. The Post-Traumatic Parenting book is forthcoming from Broadleaf in 2025. There will be a pre-order link on my website, drrobinkoslowitz.com, shortly, so stay tuned for that. And as always, please comment below. Let me know if there's anything you feel like I left out, anything you want to know more about, if you have some information you want to share, other picture books that you love to use to help prepare your children and keep them safe, or other techniques or games you play with your kids to help them and help them understand confusing adults and not confusing adults, and safe and trusted adults. So if you have anything else you want to add, please let us know below. If you have a video topic you'd like to suggest, let me know, because I absolutely do shoot videos based on community members' requests. Till next time.